We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. That's the Declaration of Independence, adopted in Congress, July 4th, 1776. This is the issue, and I am the Ghetto Man. Today's issue: what is an inalienable right? Don't go away. We'll be right back. Every time there's another school shooting or another nut goes crazy and shoots up a bunch of people in a mall or something, the left always starts screaming for more gun control, gun control, gun control. Well, first of all, I just want to make one thing perfectly clear. The Second Amendment of the Bill of Rights, the rights of everybody to keep and bear arms. And of course, the Second Amendment deals more with the militia than it does with the personal rights to owning arms. But once you study the militia issue, you see that, private ownership in arms and having those arms to use in a military fashion as a citizen army, so to speak, in the militia, they run hand in hand. And they're one of the rights that we have that is referred to as an inalienable right. The words unalienable and inalienable are synonymous terms. Unalienable means incapable of being transferred. The natural rights of life and liberty are unalienable. Inalienable, a word denoting the condition of those things, the property in which cannot be lawfully transferred from one person to another. There are also many rights which are inalienable, as rights of liberty or of speech. And that's out of Bouvier's Law Dictionary. Inalienable, Black's Law Dictionary. Not subject to alienation, the characteristic of those things which cannot be bought or sold or transferred from one person to another, such as rivers and public highways and certain personal rights. As an example, liberty or life or free speech. Unalienable. It's synonymous with inalienable, meaning incapable of being aliened. That is, sold and transferred, inalienable rights. Rights which can never be abridged because they are so fundamental. Black's Law Dictionary. This is the 5th edition. And to give you an example would be like, I can't give my right to freedom of speech to you because you have your own right. That's something that belongs to me, and I can't sell it to you. I can't even trade it. It's just a fundamental right that I have, and that I have a right to exercise or not exercise it. Liberty, same thing. I can't give you my right to liberty, nor can you give me your right to liberty. These are things that we have on our own. Well, the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the United States Constitution, these rights are referred to as inalienable rights. These are rights that cannot, under any circumstances, be given away or taken away from you, except, the one exception is through due process of law. You rob a house and you're charged with a crime and you're tried and you're convicted and then you're going to go to jail, of course, and you have to pay fines. So your life, liberty, and property can be taken away, but it can only be taken away through due process. Government can't just arbitrarily legislate it away. And that's where I'm going with this is I'm trying to show you how important it is to understand what an inalienable right is, because when the gun control, the leftists, these people who want to take away our rights to own certain weapons, when they start screaming for legislation to do so, there's a problem. Under our Constitution, No legislative body, whether it be state or the federal government, has the authority to pass any law to regulate our right to defend ourselves with firearms. They have no right to pass a law that infringes on that in any way. You know, it's interesting to note when you think about the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. I mean, they've only been around since 1972. Not very long when you think about it. And what we've seen, especially since the 60s, is a slow erosion. They start, registering guns. We have all these different guns that we can no longer own, like a machine gun. All this stuff is starting to whittle away at our personal right to defend ourselves, our inalienable right to defend ourselves. The legislator, especially at the federal level, has no authority to pass any gun control whatsoever. They don't even have the right to create the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. In order for a law to be valid, it has to be in agreement with the United States Constitution. If a law is passed that violates the Constitution, like any gun law, it is no law at all. And we, the people, we, the citizens, the sovereigns, those who have given our consent to be governed, and very limited consent, and that's through the contract we have with government, the United States Constitution, we have not only the right but the duty to resist and not obey a law that is openly unconstitutional. And I believe, from my own research and study and my experience, that because of the separation of powers doctrine, that there is not one branch that is more powerful than another, and all three branches, none of them are more powerful than we the people. So even when a court makes a decision, and we all can see that that decision is blatantly unconstitutional, we don't have to obey that law. And we've discussed many different ways that we can operate and exercise our own checks and balances, like sitting on the trial jury or on the grand jury by a vote of acquittal. I'm going to read from Elliot's Debates, 94, Bancroft, History of the Constitution, page 267. The Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights is designed to hold the national government in check, to protect the individual citizen from an unchecked, all-powerful government. However, those documents are not a safeguard to liberty should they stand in the way of a government that has either the cunning to evade their requirements or the power of force to overcome those who would attempt to defend their constitutional rights. That's pretty powerful. You see, in order to maintain any inalienable right, you must, on a daily basis, exercise it. Because if you don't exercise it, then people are going to think that you don't have that right. And then people are going to start passing legislation thinking they have a right to limit how you exercise that right. And that's where we are today. We all need to educate ourselves. We need to understand how our constitutionally protected rights work. And above all, we need to start exercising those rights, and we need to exercise them on a daily basis. Carry a sidearm open everywhere you go. Carry it so people get used to seeing it, so that they're not afraid of it. They understand that it's a tool, and that some people like to protect themselves with firearms. Some people might like to protect themselves with something else. I don't know, knife. I don't know. But or pepper spray, there's a million different things you can use to protect yourself. You don't even have to use a lethal weapon. But you need to exercise that right, because if you don't exercise that right, well, people are going to forget that they have that right. And of course, they're going to start believing that when a legislator passes a law, regardless of how unconstitutional it is, they're going to believe that they have to obey that. See, right now they're screaming for gun control, and they want more gun control legislation when any gun control legislation is unconstitutional, and nobody is bound to obey it. It's an unconstitutional law. And just because someone in the legislature passes a law does not make it constitutional. And just because the executive branch enforces a law doesn't make it constitutional. And above all, when a court makes a ruling, doesn't necessarily mean it's constitutional. There's corruption, and it can be in all three branches of government. That's why all power comes back to you and me, we the people. That's why we have to exercise our rights, and we have to do them diligently. You have to start exercising your constitutionally protected rights so you don't lose them. Court case that came to mind this morning, I looked it up on the internet just so I could make sure I got the citation correctly. It comes from a case called Laird versus Tatum. It can be found in Book 408 of the United States Supreme Court Reports. Starts on page 1. This particular quote is on page 28. It's a 1972 case. Those who already walk submissively would say there is no cause for alarm, but submissiveness is not our heritage. The First Amendment was designed to allow rebellion to remain as our heritage. The Constitution was designed to keep government off the backs of the people. Our right to rebel, our right to call government out when it violates the contract, the Constitution, is an inalienable right. And we can't give this right away to anybody either. We have to exercise it ourselves. When people start screaming gun control and legislators start talking about passing laws, that's the time. That's the time that you need to exercise your right to keep and bear arms. As a sovereign citizen of the United States of America, you have a right to own whatever type of firearm you choose. The government does not have the constitutional authority to prohibit the ownership of any type of firearm. There's nothing in the Constitution that grants the government that power. Your right to keep and bear arms, your right to publicly display those arms, is an inalienable right, a right that no one can take from you without due process of law, especially your servant government. And when you exercise your right to bear arms, it is a public statement of freedom, a statement of freedom that is only valid when it is insisted upon by you, a free citizen, the belligerent claimant in person. I'm the Ghetto Man. Thank you for watching. If you're politically correct, then you're legally wrong. And if you're not part of the solution, then you are the problem. Please subscribe and please share.